So thank you everybody for being here. We have a lot to get through today and have about an hour and a half. So I'll go ahead and get us started. So for those of you who I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, I'm with Big Sky Public Relations and I work on behalf of the Montana Department of Transportation. As I've been part of the communications team for many different projects in the area, you may have seen us at past Kalispell Bypass open houses or working on the Darn and Spring Creek project or Batavia just up Highway 2. So I'm Katie Cleets. I'm the current communications manager and I'm available to help however I can throughout the Foys Lake Road project. So as I said, MDT has hired us to help in a number of different ways, including providing updates during construction, creating press releases for the media, and hosting public meetings such as this one. Normally, we would have this meeting hosted in person, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've decided to host a virtual meeting instead. So also with me on this call is Becca McLean, our newest account executive on the Big Sky PR team. She'll actually be taking over the project in the coming weeks and is attending the open house to learn more as she dives in. We'll share her contact information at the end of this presentation. So I say that just because you'll likely hear less and less from me and more from her as this project progresses. In addition, we have some folks from MDT. We have Beth Kappas, John Schmidt, Bob Vosen, and Drew Fetters. These folks are your go-to resources for all things Kalispell Bypass and will be overseeing the Foys Lake Road progress. Would all of you like to say hi and introduce yourselves briefly? We'll start with Beth.
Hi everyone, welcome. This is Beth with MDT and I work for our alternative contracting group and help support the department's design build projects like this one.
Good afternoon. I'm John Schmidt. I'm the Missoula District Construction Engineer. In general, I am responsible for the highway road construction for the department in western Montana, and will be assisting our project manager with whatever he needs. And my home and office are both located in the Flathead Valley.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bob Vosen. I'm the district administrator for the Missoula district of the Montana Department of Transportation. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their day to join us today. I am sorry we can't be meeting in person. That was definitely my preferred method to have events such as this. I also reside in the Flathead Valley. My kids go to school at Flathead High, and I'm very excited to be moving forward with this project.
Good afternoon. I'm Drew Fetters. I am the project manager for the Kalispell Bypass. I also reside in the Flathead Valley.
Thanks, Drew. And last but not least, we have representatives from our engineering and construction teams. So LHC Construction and KLJ engineers are hard at work finalizing the design for the Foys Lake interchange. KLJ is the lead engineering firm and LHC is the construction team who will be moving forward with our finalized design. They're here to explain any of your questions in more detail and share our plans with you. KLJ folks, would you like to share who's on the line? Don, maybe we can start with you.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Don Sterna. I'm the design manager for KLJ, working with LHC and also working with the MDT on this. So if you see my name or hear me around, that's my role on the project, is overseeing the design effort.
Hi, this is Kathy Harris. I'm also with KLJ, working with Dawn, but I'm focusing more in the environmental area. I'd like to say a note of thanks for all the folks attending. I've been involved with the Kalispell Bypass for many years, but again, focusing on the environmental piece for this particular part. And I'm based out of Helena, Montana. Thank you.
Hello, this is Joe DeVore with KLJ. I'm based out of our St. Paul office and overseeing the traffic engineering on the project. I've been involved with a couple MDT projects in the Kalispell area on Airport Road, and am glad to be a part of the Foys Lake Road project as well.
Thanks, KLJ folks. And Jim from LHC, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Katie, and hi, everyone. I'm Jim Mitchell, and I'm part of the management team for LHC Construction. As Katie mentioned, we'll be doing the construction on the project. And first off, on behalf of LHC, I'd really like to thank everybody for taking part in this open house. Like Bob, I wish we were doing this in person. I recognize a lot of the attendees. I'm sure I've spoke with you on other projects, but we are committed to do whatever we can to keep everybody informed and and hopefully we can have some of these in person in the near future. Also want to mention how excited LHC is to be able to bring this project to the community. And our goal is to have the same success that we had on the northern part of the bypass that we constructed. And on a personal note, this project's especially near and dear to me. In my past life as an MDT manager, I was involved in the planning and construction of the Kalispell bypass for over 20 years. So with that long-winded introduction, I'll turn it back to Katie.
Thanks, Jim. That's great. So thanks, everyone. And again, I'm Katie. I've historically served as the communications manager for the Foys Lake Road project. But again, my colleague Becca will be taking over in the coming weeks. So we're here to answer your questions that you might have throughout construction. And our contact information will be shared at the end of the presentation should you ever want to get in touch. So as we've talked about before, due to COVID-19, we are using Zoom, as you are well aware, to conduct this meeting. We really thank you for your flexibility here. We'll be recording this presentation and placing it on the project webpage for viewing after these meetings. While we certainly don't foresee virtual meetings taking place of in-person open houses, we do want to take all of the necessary precautions at this time. And again, we really thank you for bearing with us. So of important note, since we can't host this meeting in person, we'll be using the Q&A system to address your questions as cohesively as possible. My colleague Takami is on the line and will be facilitating having your questions answered. And I've already seen her do a couple of those, which is great. So Takami, could you say a quick hello and explain this process to our attendees?
You bet. Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. I'm Takami, as Katie mentioned, and I'm also with Big Sky Public Relations. And I have seen a couple of questions come through too, so definitely feel free to use that Q&A box to communicate. Just a small note, since I've seen this question come through a couple times, we don't have video of the speakers for this meeting. It'll just be the audio and the presentation itself. But anyway, just wanted to let you know that I will be monitoring the Q&A system throughout the presentation. So as Katie said, at the end of the presentation, we'll be holding the Q&A session, but if you do have a question anytime throughout the meeting, please feel free to type it into that Q&A box. Looks like 2 chat bubbles on your screen, and we will get those questions answered at the end, or if there's something that I can address during the meeting, I'll try and do that too through the Q&A system. But if there's any questions we're unable to answer, we'll let you know too, and have you leave your contact information for us to get in touch. So thank you, everyone. And with that, we'll have Bob Vosen kick us off.
Thanks, Takami. Again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. MDT is very excited to be moving forward with this project, recognizing its importance to the transportation system in the Flathead Valley. And I want to thank our partners involved, especially the city of Kalispell. They put in all the hard work to secure a build grant, which has allowed this project to move forward in such a timely fashion. Much faster than what had been anticipated or would have been possible without the securing of that build grant. And also their partners that were involved, such as the Kalispell Chamber and all the good work they did promoting the project as well. So truly a team effort, and thanks to everyone involved getting us to where we are today. The Foys Lake Highway 93 alternate intersection project, or the bypass project, or Foys Lake KBP, it's many names out there, but this project, the actual construction is likely to begin in the spring of 21. You might see some early work this fall, relocating of some utilities, etc. But the bulk of the work will take place starting next spring and through the summer into the fall. The reason for that is this is a design build project, which is a little different than our traditional design bid build project. What this means is that we went forward and led a contract with a design team and a construction team together. So they provided proposals. We had several firms provide proposals. They were scored, and then there was a price factor, a price component as well to provide the best value project for the taxpayers and for the citizens in the area. So what that means currently is that the KLJ team is hard at work working on the design, but that design work is going to be ongoing through the winter. So we'll be able to start and really hit the ground running in the spring. So the Montana Department of Transportation, in conjunction with LHC and KLJ, will be replacing the roundabout that's currently at the Foys Lake intersection right now. I know everybody's extremely excited to see that, recognize the fact that there is a large amount of congestion during a couple key points during the day. The new project will provide a full access interchange there. What a full access interchange means is that there will be 4 ramps. It'll be similar to what you see at 2 Mile or at US 2 or at Old Reserve Drive, where the bypass will go over the top of Foys Lake Road, and there'll be ramps, both on and off ramps, northbound and southbound, allowing full access to the bypass. So we'll bring up the next slide here. Off to the left is the proposed new alignment, and to the right is the existing configuration. So I couldn't hear it, but I could feel the gasp from everyone as they looked and saw the new alignment that's being proposed by the design team there. You know, and I just want to let everybody know, no, we aren't completely crazy. We aren't off our rockers. This is a system that's been proven to work. I'm confident that it will work going forward. So as you can see in this rendering, the Highway 93 alternate route, or the bypass, is going to be the 4 lanes going over the top of the Foys Lake area. Similar to what you see at the other interchanges north of here. What is new and probably unexpected is the 2 roundabouts at the bottom of the ramps. These are a little different. They're teardrop shaped. Some people refer to it as a dog bone roundabout due to the shape. This intersection is by far the safest intersection configuration. Of particular note is on the bottom of the image, you will see the very bottom, there's a yellow line, the yellow center line with the median in it. And this is Valley View Drive. And what's unique about this area is the fact that there are actually 5 legs on this roundabout. If we try to construct a 5-legged intersection with a signal, those are the intersections that a few towns have one. Missoula and Helena both have them. They're called malfunction junction, and they typically do not function very well. That's hence the malfunction part of that junction. So this roundabout method will allow this traffic to flow much better in the area. The other thing that I do want to point out here is the fact that the bypass route here will be able to carry mainline traffic at highway speed without a roundabout. It's just going to be a through motion. So the roundabouts down below are going to be carrying that surface traffic, which is going to function fine with the greatly reduced volumes from the traffic on the bypass. So we do have an instance in the Missoula district where we recently installed one of these. This is at the intersection, the Foys Lake interchange in Missoula, or the Van Buren interchange in Missoula. MDT also has one of these installed at Belgrade. We've had very good success. Again, the roundabouts will be on the surface traffic only. So 90% of the truck traffic in this area utilizes the bypass, not the surface road of Foys Lake Road below. The interchanges will be much larger. The western interchange will be over 200-foot diameter, and the eastern one, or the one close to Kalispell, will be 160 feet in diameter. And that larger diameter on the west is so that we can accommodate the Valley View Drive coming into it. In addition, the shared use path, or the bike ped path, will still allow safe crossings as it does currently, and will be incorporated into it. And the final feature that I can't show on the slide we have here, but is the addition of a parking area up at the corner of Valley View Drive, where many people are currently parking on the roadway, accessing the trail that goes up to Lone Pine State Park, or to access the trail that parallels the Kalispell bypass. And this new facility will be designed so that semis and large trucks that do need to access the surface street or get into Kalispell, that they are designed to handle that. You can see in this slide that there is a truck apron. That's the area in gray shown inside the circle. Some changes have been made from the existing truck aprons on the bypass right now. That is that the curb going up onto those ramps is going to be much more gentle, so that there won't be such a shift to the truckloads, and it'll be a much smoother transition for the trucks that do need to use that area. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn and Joe from KLJ so they can talk about some roundabout safety benefits.
Thank you, Bob. This is Don Stern with KLJ, the design manager. I'm going to talk briefly about the roundabouts, and then I'll let Joe finish up. He's the expert in regards to the how the roundabouts function, why we selected the roundabout in our proposal, and the safety features on that. But as Bob pointed out, there's a lot of benefits to the roundabouts, and they're being more and more used in all over the United States because of their the reduction in the accidents. The serious crashes, as you can see, are significantly less. And, you know, the fatalities are some of the bigger ones we look at. And we look at the area that's out here. We're coming from a rural area setting type from the west side. We got higher speeds that come in. We're intermixing with some of the trail and sidewalk that you could see on the layout. There's safety concerns. And with the roundabouts, especially on the safety, besides reducing traffic speeds, and then we're providing basically splitter islands that are also used as pedestrian refuge. So when people are trying to cross the roadway, they only have to cross one lane of traffic looking one way instead of trying to look at both lanes and trying to find a gap to where they can safely cross at higher rates of speeds. The problem with signalized intersections is the fact that when the light is turning yellow to red, there's a lot of occasions where people run the lights. When those accidents occur at the higher rates of speed, the fatality rates go up and the severity is up. So when you look at why was the roundabouts chosen was for safety. Also, our analysis that Joe can touch on also indicated that we have lesser delays in signals, because there are always delays when you put the red light, and then you have left turn lanes, and also the operation delays are reduced. So so we took all those factors into part. We understand the concern of the community of the existing roundabout, but as Bob pointed out, we're taking a significant amount of the traffic over the top that's free flowing. We'll be handling the local traffic. And one of the other concerns that we have is the closeness of the Valley View intersection with where the proposed, if it was this traditional signal, and we're within 250 feet, which then poses more conflict issues. So that's why we ended up going with a larger roundabout on the west side to develop that fifth leg, so there's full access in and out of that and safe movements. So I can let Joe talk more about the operations and safety of the roundabout. So Joe, if you want to touch on those aspects.
Yep, thanks, Don. So as you can see on the screen, we really went with the roundabout concepts because of the kind of fatality and serious injury reduction in potential crashes at this interchange. So when we're comparing these statistics between roundabouts and traffic signals, as Don was saying, we're reducing the speed. So when vehicles do interact, they're going a much slower speed at 20 miles an hour or less. And so that really does create that 90% reduction in fatalities and 75% reduction in serious injury type crashes at the interchange. We're also seeing kind of a benefit to pedestrian interaction with these vehicles because of those lower speeds. As we have bike users and ped users using the trail and crossing Foys Lake Road or the interchange, these interactions are limited to one leg at a time, and Jim will touch base on that a little bit later. But then on the operations aspect, because of these roundabouts, we're only looking at about 50% of the traffic going through the interchange roundabouts that's going through the current roundabout. So we're reducing traffic by about 50%. So we're getting rid of all the congestion of the existing roundabout by separating out the bypass and allowing a very low delay option even into the future. We did analysis up to about 2045, and throughout the day we only have very minimal delays at the roundabouts, whereas for the signals you would have that red light delay as Don was referring to. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim Mitchell from LHC to talk a little bit more about the pedestrian and multimodal safety.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Just to kind of emphasize what Joe and Don talked about, I wanted to, mention that in addition to the safety aspects of the vehicle travel, that this area has a lot of pedestrians, cyclists, joggers, and other users of the trail and sidewalks. So that's been a big part of our consideration in the design, is the non-motorized users of this facility. And as an avid cyclist myself, and I see there's already some questions on the bike path, and I recognize some of my biking cohorts on the list. These considerations are really important, to me, and I think the community as a whole. So, like was mentioned, splitting the traffic between the roundabouts and the bypass really reduces that congestion. And as Bob and Don both mentioned, non-motorized users only have to cross one lane of traffic at a time. And I think that a big part I'll re-emphasize from what Don talked about is the slower speeds in relation to what we'd normally see at a signalized intersection. For example, drivers approaching a signal, even if it's green, they tend to maintain their speed or even accelerate to make sure that they make the light. And their focus tends to be on the signal itself and not potential conflicts with, other vehicles or the non-motorized users that I'm speaking about, the pedestrians and joggers and cyclists. So, and as that last slide pointed out, these conflicts tend to be catastrophic when they do go bad. So kind of in summary, a diamond interstate type interchange provides control at the intersection of the ramps and the crossing road, in this case being Foys Lake Road. So that control typically is either stop signs, overhead signals, or roundabouts. But we need to keep in mind, like we did in the design, that most interstate interchanges don't deal with the same level of non-motorized users and peak hour traffic influxes and residential commuters like we see on the Kalispell bypass. So with all that considered, and the fact that the number one goal of the bypass truly functioning as a bypass now, the roundabouts rose to the top of the list as the safest and most efficient way to control the intersection at the bypass and Foys Lake Road intersection. So, and like Bob said, we didn't take this lightly. We've got other examples that we looked at. The Van Buren intersection in Missoula, the Airway Boulevard in Belgrade, that had many of the same issues and considerations that we have at the Kalispell bypass, and they're working great. So we put a lot of thought into this, didn't take it lightly. So with that, again, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, and hopefully I can answer some of your questions in the Q&A. I'll turn it over to John Schmidt with MDT. He's going to talk to you a little bit about construction timelines and expectations.
Thanks, Jim. As Jim mentioned, I'm going to visit a little bit about what to expect kind of during construction with the plan we have. So right now, as was mentioned before, Construction, really what people will notice, is set to begin in March of 2021, depending on weather. And the road should be open, final configuration to all traffic in November of 2021. There is some work we have to do in the summer of 2022, which is some final striping, chip seal, and possibly some seeding. In general, our impacts to the residents through the course of the project will be general construction disturbances, including some driving delays, short interruptions, and some possible utility interruptions as affected services are relocated. As in all of our road construction, there may be some dust and noise just associated with construction. Construction will occur generally during daylight hours, consisting of single lane closures during work hours as needed. And our traffic control folks will be using flaggers to facilitate the traffic. There may be some occasional weekend closures due to safety of the traveling public and the work being done with some possible overhead work and just not being able to have traffic underneath of some heavy lifting that's happening. But the road should generally be reopened always during peak traffic hours and on weekdays. So the initial construction phase will first focus on widening the bypass south of Foys Lake Road and building the northbound ramps. Intersection of those northbound ramps will be based on using some of the new roundabout and the old roundabout to try and control traffic as it goes through, while we work on building the bridge and the roundabouts on the west side. So then once we get it finished, traffic will be shifted to allow room for the bridge and remaining bypass roadway work to be built. And the final phase will then be to shift traffic back to the newly constructed 4-lane bypass to allow for completion of the roundabouts on Foys Lake Road. This allows for traffic to be maintained on pavement for the majority of the construction in a similar configuration as the existing intersection. So with that brief rundown of what construction should look like, I'll turn it over to Beth Kappas, who will discuss the budget and maintenance.
Thanks, John. So yeah, changing gears now to talk a little bit more about project finances. The Kalispell Bypass Foys Lake Road project was awarded to the LHC KLJ design build team in the amount of $14.7 million. And as Bob had previously noted, the city of Kalispell actually applied for and received federal build grant funding to cover the majority of the costs for this project, which, as Bob said, allowed us to move this project up on our to-do list and complete this work much earlier than we would have been otherwise able to do. The federal build grant money will cover about $12.7 million in construction expenditures, and then design fees and the remaining construction costs will be covered by MDT's National Highways Funding Program, which is made up of a majority of federal funds, but also includes a portion of state funds. And then maintenance efforts and costs associated with this new facility will be really similar to what we see for the northern half of the bypass, where we already have the 4 lanes and full interchanges. And as we are working through final design, the project team is also certainly being mindful of incorporating materials and details that are aimed at reducing our long-term maintenance efforts. And the selected interchange configuration that we're implementing out here also has some added maintenance benefits, where the use of roundabouts eliminates the annual and long-term maintenance of electrical systems that are used in signalized intersections. So now that we've had a chance to talk budget and maintenance, I'll turn it over to Kathy with KLJ to talk some more about additional project considerations.
Thanks, Beth. I'm going to speak a little bit about what is required for environmental reviews and permits, but then also kind of pull in some of the other issues that we look at as part of environmental impacts with a highway or a transportation project. So for those of you that have been around a while, this 4-lane Kalispell bypass, the widening to 4 lanes and an interchange at Foys Lake Road were actually evaluated in 2005 and 6 as part of the 8-mile bypass project. So that was considered early on in the planning. The interim phase that was built was due to the funding in place at the time when that piece was built, about 2010. But again, the environmental impacts were looked at for this type of roadway and interchange. We are now updating that. We look at things like updated environmental regulations, and if there are changes to the project that in and of itself would have different or new environmental impacts. So there's a picture on the screen that there's a red boundary, which is the area we've come back and look at. And we look at both the biological or the natural state of lands in that area. We look at right-of-way ownership. We look at the transportation features already in there. And then we also look at some of the regulations and impacts that flow into that. So first of all, what we're doing is reevaluating the 2006 document, and there will be an official reevaluation that does come out specific to this project, and that will be late this fall. Along with that reevaluation, which again is just reviewing the previous document and any new updates. We also will be getting various levels of construction permits. So before I delve into that kind of red boundary in there, I want to make one other comment. MDT has recognized that at the top of the screen, up at Ashley Creek, where the current bridge flows over Ashley Creek, we actually have some of the stream banks that are kind of eroding. You know, the natural energy of the stream is causing the stream bank to kind of slough off. So that results in poorer water quality. It also affects the quality of the stream, you know, what kind of things can live in it. So as part of this project, we are going to go in and restore that stream bank, build it up with natural treatments so that it can kind of withstand the energy of the stream. And that will be one of the activities that is done in early spring, probably around March. I want to bring that up as it's not really a direct impact from the construction work that we're planning, but it is something that the DOT recognizes as a good neighbor measure to try to ensure the water quality in the area. Ashley Creek does, you know, flow all the way through this project and then discharge in the Flathead River. They're both kind of neat waterways, and MDT is committed to trying to keep the water quality as good as we can. So that's one area that's going on. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do within that red boundary that's shown. So we're looking at biological resources. That includes things like wetlands, grasses, noxious weeds. Yes, that's in there too. The stream banks. It also includes things such as wildlife. And we have looked at the amount of wildlife that crosses in the area. And there's not a real history or proven case of where wildlife are causing crashes or getting hit along this particular roadway. Now, other areas of Montana and other areas, actually I know up Foys Lake Road, there's quite a few areas where wildlife are more interactive. But on this highway, they aren't too interactive. And a lot of that is because of the urban environment that's around it. So wildlife has been looked at, but we really don't have a treatment or a need to address that. Along with other biological things, we are doing what's called updating the wetlands to see if they've grown or shrunk in size, and then if our project will, in fact, you know, put some dirt into wetlands or other things. And if so, we have to mitigate that. So that's part of the work that we're doing right now. And that ties in with that cleaning up the stream up at Ashley Creek itself. So there are some other areas that we look at that are more social impacts. One of those is looking at the bike path, which right now the north-south bike path will be maintained. During construction, it will be maintained, although there may be some minor disruptions during construction. But I'd also like to point out, there's the tunnel that crosses underneath near Sunnyside Drive, and that connects to Lone Pine Park. So that tunnel itself will be able to be used by non-motorized users throughout the construction. And then one of the features that we're adding is to put a small parking area on the west side of the bypass. And that's to help address some of the problems for vehicles that are parking to get to the state park. And they're kind of cluttering up the roadway over on Valley View. And it's a bit of a cooperative effort between the Department of Transportation and the state parks management facility. But that is planned to help address some of the transportation issues. Obviously, we look at increased traffic volumes. We look out for 20 years. And the proposed interchange and the roundabouts operate just fine in 20 years with reasonable growth, which we do project. Along with traffic volumes, we also look at things like traffic generated noise. And that is something that was looked at pretty extensively in 2006. Now we've come back and looked at updating those traffic noise volumes or traffic noise impacts. And we've looked in the area of where we're proposing the interchange and then also where the roadway is being widened. What we found is the noise is very consistent with what was estimated back in 2006. And because in 2006 we looked at this and said, yes, there is traffic noise. Some of it is within MDT policies and federal guidance, and we can abate it. To that end, we built a large wall on the east side where there's a large number of properties. However, in 2006 and currently, we find that the properties are far enough away from the roadway that the traffic noise is not increasing as much as meets either the statewide policy or the federal guidelines. So there's not a feasible way to bring that noise down for those residences out there. We recognize it's an impact, but it was looked at in '06, and what we're finding now in our draft work, which is nearly finished, but not quite, but our draft work shows that the increase in noise is just not substantial enough to justify putting in some of that abatement or treatment. So those noise reports will be posted on the website. Also the 2006 document, which is kind of a framework we're working off of, will also be posted on the website. So those were a couple areas I wanted to refer to. Kind of the last thing that we bring into the environmental reevaluation is safety for both vehicles and then also non-motorized users. And to those aspects, we're building a solution that we feel is a safer option. And I think I want to turn it over to Bob to talk a little bit more about how MDT is embedded in safety and Vision Zero.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, Vision Zero is, as the slide says here, it's a multi-pronged initiative. Basically, it's MDT's mission statement to do everything we can with the ultimate goal of eliminating deaths and serious injuries on Montana's roads. And one prong of this is having good roads, bridges, and intersections, as they are a key component to safe and efficient travel throughout Montana. Good roads make it easier and safer for the citizens to do business, visit families, attend public events, take your kids to school events, go to football games, etc. And MDT recognizes that the Kalispell Bypass is one of the valley's many highly traveled roads, but this is one of the most traveled roads in the valley. And therefore, this project and all of the future projects on the Kalispell Bypass must align with our Vision Zero goal. And as we've gone through today, MDT, LHC, KLJ, we all feel strongly that the design that we are bringing forward today is the best option available to us to help us to achieve our goal of Vision Zero. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Beth to discuss how the public can continue to stay involved with us, interact with us going forward through the public involvement process.
Thanks, Bob. As always, MDT welcomes any input and feedback on our project plans. As previously noted, the improvements planned out at the Foys Lake Road intersection are currently on an accelerated schedule, so the project timeline has been a little bit different from what you might typically see for a project of this nature. So kind of circling back to how we got started with this project, once the city and MDT were notified that build grant funds were awarded to this project, we opted to deliver this project using the design build method. And the design build method is essentially a project delivery system that allows for more overlap in both the design and construction phases of the project. And that overlap leads to project delivery that occurs more rapidly. And that's really important in this case because there are timing restrictions associated with the build grant funds. So in essence, we have to use those funds before they expire and are no longer available. So in design build delivery, the contractor and engineer team up to develop a proposed design and cost for completing the project. And in this case, MDT, in partnership with the city, went through a very involved procedure to evaluate several proposals and ultimately selected the LHC KLJ design and cost, which has really proven to represent a best value to roadway users and taxpayers in Montana. And I think that's been well highlighted throughout this discussion. And the interchange that's being implemented was selected, as previous speakers said, based on safety, reduced traffic delays, and overall improved operations. So again, we welcome any feedback and look forward to hitting up those Q&A questions that are coming in. And I'll turn it back to Katie now for more information on how to stay in touch with us.
Hi, thanks, Beth. This is Becca speaking on behalf of Katie. Thanks, everyone, again, for being here. As Beth mentioned, Big Sky Public Relations is available throughout this entire construction process to address any of your questions or concerns. Here on the slide, as you'll see, you can reach out to me directly, Becca at bigskypublicrelations.com, or my colleague Katie that spoke earlier. Her email is katie@bigskypublicrelations.com. You're also more than welcome to call our hotline during business hours at the number indicated there, 406-207-4484. Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts, get your feedback, answer questions, like I said. If you would like to receive a weekly construction update, you're also welcome to email me and I'll get you looped in on that so you can be updated as we progress on the project. You're also more than welcome to visit the website linked on this page that you'll see on the bottom left there as well. We have that link is updated regularly, so we'll have updates again as construction progresses. We're going to actually pause here and leave this screen up so you can write down this info as well as just review information that we've covered. We are now going to transition into the Q&A session. Thanks everyone for putting in your great questions. If you have any other questions that aren't already in the Q&A, go ahead and use that Q&A messaging system. And we're going to use the remaining time to answer questions that you have. So we'll get going on that. Thanks, everyone. Takami, you want to kick us off?
I sure do. Thanks, guys. We do have a very lively Q&A, which I'm excited to see. Feel free to keep punching in those questions, and we'll definitely get through. And I'm just going to start at the top of the list and work my way down. But if there's time, we can also address some of the other things that have already been answered, or we can talk about some other rehash some issues as well. But the first question we have is from George, and he's saying, I'm just going to read this through. Highway projects have an infamous history of creating barriers between natural resources and neighborhoods/communities. Knowing that this project interacts very closely with several neighborhoods, parks, trails, how will this project not just maintain, but improve pedestrian, bike, and wheelchair connections, accessibility, and safety? And I know that's lots of things going on in that, lots of different topics in that question. So I'm going to start off with Dawn, and Dawn, feel free to kick this off to other folks for more input.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very good question. And I think that was one of the main emphasis behind why we looked at the teardrop roundabouts, because they are proven to be one of the safer intersection types that you can select. It provides the splitter islands where we can have a refuge to cross one lane at a time with traffic. So it provides that ability to only get one lane instead of two. You can sit in the middle of the island, wait for the traffic to pass the other way, and more safely cross the roadway. The other things the roundabouts do is, obviously, as we mentioned, it slows down the speeds. So if someone's coming into the roundabout, the roundabouts are very well lit at night. So they'll be able to see very well what's happening in and around the roundabouts. So as pedestrians use it, or any other users at night can see very clearly, and also the vehicles driving will be able to see very clearly as well, which helps in the whole aspect of safety. As you can see on here, on the layout that we had earlier, that the trail along the east side of the bypass is going to be maintained. So that connection will continue on. We are extending a trail connection along the north side of Foys Avenue that will then safely cross the ramps, also cross over to the other roundabout, and then you'll have access to the Valley View Drive neighborhood. We're building a sidewalk connection down to the down to the end of the Valley View where the sidewalk and section exists today. So they were kind of disconnected from any kind of safe walking before. So that sidewalk system will be added as part of the project, which gets back to the gist of the project. You can see here in the photo they just brought up, this is the rendering of it, and you can see along the west side that sidewalk connection that goes down Valley View. And you can see how each one of the splitter islands, as they cross through, you've got that space in between there where you can have a refuge and then look for the other piece of any other traffic coming the other direction. So those refuge islands are very critical. And the other thing that we talked about is slowing down the rate of speed consistently of vehicles using the roundabouts from all directions. So as you can all see, and everyone has experienced, people running red lights or trying to cross multiple lanes of traffic. They have a tendency to run across the road or walk fast across the road where they're signalized when they're not supposed to. So trying to control all that with signals is very difficult, and you got a lot wider roadway section to try to cross when you use a signalized intersection. So the roundabouts break it down to one-way traffic each way. And you can see with the pathway system along the north, the sidewalk system on the south, that's an enhancement that expands what was out there and provides the future connection for the city, their long-range plans to push their trail further to the west. And I do know that there were some comments regarding sidewalk connections into the city. That has not been part of the original proposal, but we understand those concerns. It's just, there's always a limit on funding, and that's really more of a local decision that if they want to have sidewalks or something placed along there, that's either would be added to the project if the city desires. That would be probably a city cost. And that's pretty extensive. You can see in that photo, that would be quite a project to move that up. So I think that probably needs to be addressed in the future when Foys Lake Road is upgraded to the east to make those needed connections that have been brought up. But I think when you look at how pedestrians utilize these facilities, we're trying to slow down the speed and then trying to give the casual walker user of the trails and sidewalk systems safe refuges between traffic movements. So hopefully that answers the question. But that was really the heart of why we selected the teardrop roundabout was for safety.
Hey, Don, this is Bob, and I just want to interject. This piece of roadway from the end of our project to the intersection of 7th and Meridian is actually, this is a stretch of county road. It's kind of a no man's land because it's not connected to a lot of roadway that the county maintains. It's actually stuck in between a couple pieces of city, which would be these two routes, and state, which is these routes. So currently there is no plan to reconstruct this parcel of road. It's something that we're aware of, we're looking at. We did put an overlay in there. I know that our maintenance staff are looking at what can we do as far as improving the guardrail along the stretch of roadway. But as far as getting a shared use path put in there, that's something that I know there's desire to make connection, but it's something that MDT, the city, and the county would all have to sit down. We would not be able to do it as part of this project. There are some really strong funding constraints tied to the build grant on how we can add to the project and what that looks like. So unfortunately, that's something that will not be able to be part of this project.
Thank you, Bob. I don't know, Joe, if there's anything you want to add to the safety aspects of the roundabouts from the traffic standpoint.
Nothing to add, Don. I think you did a good job explaining it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Our second question we have is from Nancy, and she would like to know where we stand on the sound wall. And I know we did cover this a bit, but Kathy, if you could just sort of revisit this and just sort of address some of those concerns that I've been seeing popping through from a few different residents.
You bet. And I'd like to also address, I think, Nancy and perhaps others who have communicated with MDT. I know there's been a petition or some written letters. There is the intent to have a separate meeting to discuss in more detail with folks that live right in there about the noise impacts and what can be done to try to reduce noise and what really is outside of the feasible nature. So the question is where we stand on a sound wall or berm. Right now, this project would not be eligible for federal funding, the highway dollars, or within MDT's noise policy to put in additional noise walls. And noise berms are usually not installed by the Department of Transportation, although they do provide that, we call it abatement. But the DOTs usually look at something more like a noise wall, and they simply are not eligible because the current traffic and the noise will increase, but not enough to meet the limits, or sorry, the requirements for that additional funding. And I was going to say, I know that can be, there can be a lot more technical explanations and whatnot, and would be glad to get that into that with some of the folks along Valley View, but I think we may want to defer it outside of this meeting or to the end of this meeting so that we can try to cover a lot of the questions. And Takami, I don't know if you want me to go on or leave it there with the caveat that we do plan to meet with affected residences about noise in a separate meeting.
I think that's great. Thank you for explaining all of that, Kathy. Our next question is from George, and it is, there's a lot of text here, so I do want to read through it so that we can get a sense of the whole scope of the question. So he is saying this project seems to end around 50 feet past the roundabout as the roads enter and exit the west neighborhood crossing Ashley Creek. Currently, the multi-use trail terminates with a sidewalk tapering into the road. I've long been concerned about this small piece of road that connects a large neighborhood to a recreation resource via a narrow road with little to no shoulder. As this project develops, more vehicle traffic will access and exit on this road, making this connection even more dangerous. Are there any plans to create a safe pedestrian connection from the trail system to the west side neighborhood? Same question for Sunnyside Drive access. And Bob, perhaps you could sort of explain this a bit further.
You bet. Thanks, Takami. I think I already covered the discussion about the connection along here, along Foys Lake Road coming into the Meridian 7th intersection, the difficulties there. The other part of the question would be the Sunnyside Drive access. That's something that we are aware of. We're looking at it. That's again, there's some constraints with what we're allowed to do with the funding and connecting to streets that aren't part of the bypass. So it's something that we are looking at. But at this point, there's no firm plan to connect anything to the Sunnyside Drive from the ramp and improve that interchange. And then the other part of the question was more vehicle traffic will access and exit this road, making the connection even more dangerous in the crossings. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to Kami because George's 2 questions down. He also asked about the Hawk signals, and that is something that will be looked at. I'll let maybe Don or Joe from KLJ dive into that a little bit further, but the overall connectivity in the area, tying into additional city streets is going to be challenging, but we are looking at it, particularly the Sunnyside Drive.
Great, thank you. All right, next question we have is, I kind of want to revisit this one from Steve. Kathy, I know you mentioned stuff about Animal Crossings and what we looked into there. He was curious about what will be done to mitigate animal intrusion onto the bypass at the crossing near Ashley Creek.
Right. At this time, we aren't trying to install barriers for wildlife. We're going to leave it as is, where there's fencing along the bypass right away. Now that fencing doesn't necessarily keep out wildlife, but there's a twofold reason. One, we haven't had a lot of crashes or wildlife carcasses created. So we recognize that it can be a problem, but in this case, we aren't seeing a concentrated problem along this 1 mile segment or up at Ashley Creek. And then secondarily, once we start introducing those wildlife fences, we have a problem with the pedestrian trail getting access to the sidewalks in the neighborhoods. So it's a good solution sometimes, but it creates other conflicts. And because of those kind of two conflicting things, one, we don't have a large need, and two, it introduces a new problem. So for those reasons, and because the area is becoming more urbanized, those changes are coming on and are expected to continue in the next 20 years. For those reasons, we are not planning to do special wildlife crossings or fencing into and around Ashley Creek or along the length of the project.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Laird is asking, what is the interchange going to look like during construction? John, perhaps you could talk about that, about just the construction things that people can expect.
You bet. So in general, if we're looking at the picture on the screen, right where the overpass is where the existing roundabout is. And so the initial plan will be to construct the other 2 lanes and the northbound ramps through where the where that eastern roundabout is. So here's our phase 1 plan. And so traffic will generally, there'll be some kind of a temporary roundabout where the northbound ramps intersect Foys Lake Road that will control traffic through the intersection. We'll build that, and then phase 2, and while traffic's over there, then we will be constructing the overpass and the other roundabout. In working traffic through there, there'll be some temporary detours, some flaggers, generally always on pavement, and then once we can have traffic on the full bypass, we'll finish the eastern roundabout, and then we'll be done. So there will be some traffic disruptions, as with all road construction, but our plan is to do it in roughly 8 months and just kind of get in and get out as best we can.
Great, thank you. Laird, second question, perhaps, I don't know if it's available on this slide or not, but can you show where the bike lane is, and is any signaling provided for it? And perhaps this can go over to Don, maybe?
Yes, maybe you can back up to that overall rendering that we had there. I think it was slide 3 or 4, one more right there. So as you can see, the bike lane basically is running along the east side there where that arrow is going. That's going to be straightened out a little bit, brought to that location and brought across the intersection like they're showing, and then continuing north along the current bypass, or along the current trail. What will be built in there is a wider trail section. There's a smaller sidewalk. Then the trail section will be brought along the north side of Foys and brought, just as the arrow is showing, up to that point. I know the city has some long-range plans of future of extending that bike lane further to the west, and this is in here to help facilitate that potential extension and get that built now, because it'd be very difficult to build it later. But that'll then at least tie into the Valley View Drive sidewalk system that's a little bit down the Valley View to that neighborhood that has sidewalk systems, so people will be able to access up to the roundabout safely off of the roadway, up through around the roundabout, and then to the east. And Bob has talked about the challenges on that section as we between where we leave off on our construction and that state highway system that connects up to the city roadway system. So so that's where the bicycle traffic will be going, and there's a sidewalk system along the south side of Foys. As you can see, that's the thinner narrow line that's crossing through there, right in that area. That'll be a 5-foot concrete walk that then people can access that way as well. So there's a couple different ways to get along Foys in through there. And you know, typically in all roundabouts, they like to separate the bikes, so there isn't a separate bike lane that goes on the road because there's too many conflict points. So it's almost traditional, almost always in roundabouts, is they want to take the bicycle traffic that's utilizing the road system, bring them up onto the bike lanes that are separated from the traffic to keep that traffic away from and out of the turn-in movements that are occurring. And that's for many reasons. One, especially for safety. So hopefully that answers the questions. You can see the conductivity between those systems, and then they'll just have to wait for time to try to catch up. And as these other roadways that connect, hopefully at that time they'll be able to facilitate better connections into the city and for the users out in this area. So hopefully that answers your questions.
One addition to that, Don, is the signaling on the second part of the question. Most of these crossings are only one-lane crossings, so we generally don't add signalized crossing or anything like that with those types of crossing. And with taking off the bypass traffic out of the picture, we expect most of these crossings to be pretty low volume. Even into 2045 conditions, so that we'll have more of a safe feel than the existing crossings are today.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, thank you both. The next question I have is, are there plans to fix or replace the culverts at Ashley Creek and connect the sidewalks from the trail system to the city sidewalks? This would be a good time to do that work. And perhaps this can go to Don.
Yeah, I'll take a run at this. The culvert underneath Ashley Creek, I guess that I'm not quite sure what that refers to. If that's the crossing that's a little bit to the east of our roundabout, that's being proposed, I take it. We're not proposing to do any work that far. So what you can see on here in the roundabout, if I understand the question, we're not extending our work up that way. I don't know the condition of that culvert and any history on that. Bob can maybe comment on it after I'm done. But we talked about the sidewalk connections into the city, so I don't know if there's anything further I can really add to that discussion that wasn't already brought up. And you know, it's always, as Bob mentioned too, there's always limits on funding. There's a lot of constraints on extending projects beyond their initial scope from what was budgeted. So if Bob wants to comment further on that, I'd let him do that. But there's not too much more I can add regarding that at this point, unless Bob has some other comments he wants to add.
I think we've covered that pretty well. And I also am not sure about the fix, replace the culverts at Ashley Creek. Kathy or Jim, do you have any ideas on that?
So this is Kathy. Ashley Creek to the north doesn't have any culverts updated. And then, as was explained a little bit by Don, you know, Ashley Creek meanders so much, there's multiple crossings, but we don't plan to do anything to the crossing underneath Foys Lake Road. And Ashley Creek does come near the Kalispell bypass and the bike path, just south of Foys Lake Road, but that is not planned to be significantly changed in terms of the stream itself. Now the roadway and some of the drainage on the roadway will. So we're trying to answer that question. We aren't quite sure, so I hope we've addressed it somehow.
Bob, I assume they're referring to the culvert up in that county road section. Yeah, right there before 7th, and the connections that we already spoke of there. That's the only real culvert on Ashley Creek in the near vicinity.
Okay. Thanks everyone for your thoughts on that. My next question is, are you taking into consideration the buses stopping? Are you giving them an area to pull over and not stop the flow with the roundabouts? And again, I guess I'll punt this over to Don first, but Don, feel free to send it over to other folks as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm not aware of any bus stops that currently exist out there. No, Bob might have to provide some input on that, or Jim, but I'm not aware of any bus stops that are out there. There's no bus stops, especially in a roundabout area. We wouldn't put a bus stop along that stretch. So I don't know if I can really answer any further than that. I imagine school buses are stopping at, there's a house just to the east of the roundabouts. And that's just the typical 2-lane roadway there. But if I'm incorrect on, I don't believe there's bus stops out along this stretch that we're working on currently. So I think that's the best I can help with that. So Bob, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a bus stop either. There may be a stop right here for a second, but in this location, I wouldn't anticipate this being a large, long stop. It would be difficult to move that bus stop further down, as we don't have a path for the kids to utilize to get to a more distance position. So it's something we can definitely look into as we develop the project, though.
Perfect. And Bob, perhaps you can address this next question as well. Will 4 lanes go all the way to Cemetery Road?
So as shown in one of these previous slides here, that this project is not going to get to Cemetery Road. Cemetery Road is this would be Cemetery Road down here, and this project ends at the end of the existing concrete noise wall, roughly. So the answer would be no.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is, where will the Valley View parking area be located? And Bob,
I can take that one again,
yeah.
Tommy.
Thank you.
Generally, it's going to be located, I'm trying to think if I have a slide that clearly shows it. For those of you familiar with the area, when you turn on Valley View, it makes, if you're southbound on Valley View, the road makes a left-hand turn and then a right-hand turn. At that right-hand turn is where people park frequently, right on the corner. It's the closest point Valley View Road gets to where the tunnel comes out. The parking area will be built between north of Valley View Road, between the tunnel and that sharp corner that people park on. I hope that helps. I apologize that I don't have a good graphic to show it.
Thank you. Our next question is, the northern portion of the bypass includes very little flora aside from grass. Is it possible to plan a significant visual barrier of trees and shrubs between the multi-use trail and the highway? I'm gonna start with Kathy on this response.
You bet. The simple answer is it would be possible, but we don't recommend it. Okay. You're correct about it would be nice to have more visual relief in the area, but for vehicle safety, also for visibility and security, we don't plan to put a barrier of trees and shrubs in there. So it will be open, and that allows it to be, you know, when snowplows come through and they put snow onto that, it doesn't hit a tree and then get iced up on the roadway. It allows drainage and other things to occur, which are real important to keeping all that water off either the trail or the drainage. So no, we don't plan to put any visual barriers in there.
Thank you. The next question we have is from Nancy, and this goes back to sort of the Valley View question. Does the sidewalk go all the way down Valley View to the park entrance? Bob, could you answer that one?
No, the sidewalk will not go down there. The sidewalk will only parallel Valley View Drive as far as what we need to, as shown in this graphic. When we make our connection point to the existing Valley View Drive, that's where the sidewalk and the project ends.
Great, thank you. Next question is, what is the height of the underpass? I might go to Don for this one.
Yeah, I can answer that. Thank you. All the underpasses are it's going to be 17 feet is the vertical clearance. That's what's required underneath this roadway. So I don't know if there's too much more to add on that, but the vertical clearance between Foys and the bottom of the bridge will be 17 feet. in that location. So the most critical point will be that, which will be on the east side of the bridge, is the critical point that it'll be the closest to Foys Road. So hopefully that'll answer that question.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is from Rebecca. She's asking, how about the parking for bikers? They are parking on the side along her driveway on the corner of Valley View. And I'm not sure, perhaps John, you could start with this.
Yeah, and Bob's generally covered this once already, but I think if you can go back to that phase 1 or phase 2 slide. So the road that's Valley View comes down, like Bob said, makes a 90-degree corner, and generally traffic is parking on this 90-degree corner closest to the bypass. And this is where we intend to build our parking area to help accommodate and relieve that congestion. And that parking area will be directly tied to the trail system that goes under the bypass already. So from there, they can the cyclist can generally either go to Lone Pine in the trail system, or they can go jump on the trails network that parallels the bypass.
Thank you. And I know we already mentioned the sidewalk a bunch, but this question mentions specifically if the sidewalk will go in front of 60 Valley View. I'm not sure exactly where that is. So Bob, perhaps you could address this one.
Or Takami, that might be one that we could get back, respond back to them on to look clearly where that address is and where the sidewalk would terminate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
To kind of define where that sidewalk will terminate on Valley View, we do plan on connecting it to Lupine Drive, which is short of the state park, but there's an existing sidewalk on Lupine Drive, so that will connect with that first residential street going to the west past Airport Road, or Foys Lake Road, excuse me.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Our next question is from Barb, and she is wondering how we can sort of, I'm just gonna say her question, but how are you gonna stupid proof the roundabouts? But basically knowing that there's some people who don't drive as well, if you could just sort of address some of those concerns, that would be great. Don, perhaps you could start this one.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to probably pass it over to Joe here very quickly, but to answer any of the signing that goes in within the roundabouts. And you know, as more and more of the roundabouts are being utilized, people are getting better at navigating them, understanding who has the right of way and how to drive them. It just is, it's a learning curve on them. And as they're becoming more prevalent, people are getting more used to them, how to drive them. And a lot of it is the signing and striping that helps people navigate. I get the question. I drive through a lot of them, and I notice that people are getting better at it, but you always have the few that are unsure with a lot of traffic moving around. They don't know when to go. But I can pass it over to Joe, and he can answer a little bit more of the questions on what is the more current things that are being done for signing and striping to help guide people through these roundabouts.
Yeah, thanks, Don. The big thing is how we're angling traffic in and out of roundabouts. One of MDT's ongoing policies is really addressing wrong way movements onto freeways. And with roundabouts at those interchanges, it really prevents vehicles from making that wrong way movement onto the bypass. Whereas with a signal, it's more of a right angle area where you could potentially turn right onto the southbound off ramp, or and have that kind of wrong turn causing higher severity type conflict. As far as the interaction for entering and exiting traffic into and out of the roundabout, it's really single decision points. So with the yield signing on the approaches, you're really yielding to if a vehicle is coming around the roundabout. And the question, it does kind of point out, where roundabouts are becoming more and more common. There is a learning curve involved. But if that's keeping us from building roundabouts, we're never going to get that learning curve addressed. So they are a lot safer of an intersection, and as people begin to drive them, it's really one conflict. It's yielding to a vehicle in the roundabout. Whereas with a signal, there's 2, 3, 4 different types of conflicts with permissive left-hand turns where you're turning on a green ball, or with a flashing yellow arrow. It has much more different conflicts that lead to those types of crashes. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Comey.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to jump around and address this question from Joanne. So are you going to open the flow from Sunnyside Drive to, and she's just concerned about the flow of traffic in this area since it only has one direction of traffic flow. I'm going to start perhaps with maybe Jim.
Yeah, I think this is an MDT question that Bob touched on earlier, and
I can take it. Yep.
It's being looked at, so I'll let Bob continue on.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, this is an area that we've recognized. It's something that we receive many comments about. It is challenging to try to make a connection in that area due to the proximity of how Ashley Creek does parallel the bypass through there. There's already the shared use path as well, has a tunnel that goes under the bypass. And as I had stated before, there's some challenges with the build grant and how that money can be used and how the project was defined when it was submitted for the build grant. So it's definitely an area that we recognize a need, and we're trying to, if we can't do it with this project, we're trying to get things set up so that we could potentially facilitate a future project to make that connection point.
Thank you. All right. I do want to jump back and address some of Nancy's questions. She's asking to see phase 2 slide again, which looks like this one. So we're good there. She also didn't see exactly where folks will cross this road to get to the other side of the bike path. If you could show that a little bit.
You bet. This is Bob again. So the bike path, there's the crossings, and I think that Don did a great job of explaining how the shared use path comes down along this side, the town side, crosses across here, and then we'll go underneath and around. And then it also will have the connection point that's already existing, the tunnel underneath that'll access the new parking area located in this area. And just to orient everybody, I should have done this earlier. Please notice the north arrow. So this is north is to your right when you look at the screen, and west is up. The layout prohibited us from utilizing a standard north is up. So I apologize for not pointing that out sooner.
Great, thank you. Let's see. This question is from Kip. How will shared use path access be impacted during construction? John, I think you might be best for that.
Yep, and so just like we'll have some kind of traffic control and detours set up for vehicular traffic, any impacts we have on the shared use path or the sidewalks in the area, we would accommodate it the same way. There'd be some kind of a traffic control plan and a detour to facilitate getting the walkers, joggers, and bikers through the area. All ADA compliant, obviously.
Great.
I'd just like to add to that, this is Jim Mitchell, that the biggest impact will be east of the intersection where the existing shared use path crosses the Foys Lake Road, Meridian Road area. As you could see from one of those slides, it moves to the east. So our plan is to construct that new path as soon as we can as part of that phase one scenario, and provide that access where the path will be permanently. We're still considering what type of surfacing we'll have on temporary. Of course, it'll be paved in the end, but we're going to accommodate that crossing all during construction. And I'm sure the bikers and pedestrians will figure out quickly too that pedestrian tunnel that goes over towards the Lone Pine area and Valley View will be accessible throughout construction.
Great, thank you. We have a question as well from Greg. Will there be changes at the tunnel under the bypass to the south of Foys Lake Road? Perhaps Bob, you could start us off.
You bet. And currently there are no changes planned to that tunnel, with the exception, it's not the tunnel itself, but again, at the west end of the tunnel, as you come out and head towards Valley View Drive, that is where the parking area will be as an access point.
Great. All right. And I know we just have a couple of minutes left. Katie, did you want to mention anything or say anything on your end?
No, go ahead, Takami. I think if there are additional questions that come through, we really want to make sure we're being respectful of folks' time. So it looks like we just have 3 questions left and 7 minutes, so should have plenty of time to address those. But if for some reason we don't get a chance to answer your questions, we're more than happy to follow up offline too. So we might just have a few minutes left, but this certainly isn't the end of the conversation. So thanks, Takami.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so here's one more question from Nancy. So from Valley View Drive, we cannot turn left onto Foys Lake Drive. We have to go down the farthest dog bone and come back, right? And I'm gonna start off with John here, I guess.
Yeah, and that's correct, Nancy. So, and that's due to this one of the safety things about the roundabouts is the right turn only, essentially. So yeah, you would go through the roundabouts and back the other way. Dawn or Joe, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, John. We did do that because we didn't want traffic to have to stop under the bridge. So if Valley View could kind of make that left turn in just the single roundabout, that would have to cause westbound traffic to yield, which we saw as kind of an issue if that traffic did back up in kind of under the bridge and affected the other roundabout with queuing. So with this concept where Valley View kind of makes that elongated U-turn, it keeps traffic flowing very smoothly through these roundabouts and makes it so that once you are in kind of that central interchange area, you have the right of way in whichever destination you're going.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna go over to this question from Rebecca. I know we've talked about the parking on Valley View for the park. Perhaps we can just revisit that for a little bit. Perhaps I'll send this over to Bob first.
You bet. And as we said before, the new parking area is going to be located at this corner right in here. So that is going to, we're able to get several parking spots in here. I don't know that we can alleviate all of the parking on Valley View Drive that's trying to access it, but we are going to definitely make improvements.
Great, thank you. The next is just a comment that you guys can address if you'd like. It's a comment from Laverne who says increased traffic from the bypass will increase the danger along the no shoulder section of Foys Lake County Road. Sorry, can't speak this morning. And therefore, fixing that connection to the city for the trails should be a priority.
So I'll take that one again, Takami. And again, as I said, the problem with this is that there's a challenge with I can't spend money, state funds or federal funds on a county route without it being a project nominated by the county. So there's some coordination that's going to be required through this stretch. I know that it's recognized, but there's just the ownership presents some challenges in here. So it's something that we're definitely aware of, and we'll be having further discussions with the county and the city on how we can make something happen in there.
And Bob, I did want to call to your attention. I saw a couple of comments come through from some attendees who said that there is a bus stop at Valley Drive or Valley View. I'm not sure myself.
So the bus stop at Valley View down this way, I'm assuming that bus travels down. Maybe it's currently stopping. We'll be in touch with the school district and the transport group to make sure that we can accommodate their needs, and obviously safety is the key component. So we'll find a safe place to be both picking up the kids, safe for the children and safe for the users of the roadway system.
Thank you, Bob. And I think that just about rounds us out for our Q&A. Were there any other questions? Actually, looks like something just came through. So Rebecca was just concerned about the noise, and I know we did sort of touch upon this earlier. So Kathy, if you could, I know you've mentioned this, but just sort of reiterate some of the things that you were talking about with what would be done about that and next steps for people.
Right. And noise is a difficult issue. It's all around us. And we recognize that highways create some additional noise, but there are specific limitations on how much the increase has to be from your highway project to be able to install some sort of noise treatment. And then the other thing is noise treatments. Noise walls can be really invasive in terms of they need to go hundreds of feet beyond a specific house to actually protect that house. And so many of those things come together so that now there is a state policy and there are federal regulations that say you have to meet certain criteria in order to use our highway tax dollars to build that noise abatement. I mean, we recognize there's an issue, but again, the limitations are there. And again, I want to say we would be glad to get into the technical details at a future meeting especially with folks in the area along Valley View and whatnot to try to help explain what our limitations are. But this project was evaluated in 2006, and it was deemed that these areas were not eligible for mitigation, and our current draft results show the same thing. So I know if you can leave your name with Becca or Takami, then we will be able to follow up with you in more detail. And I think that would be helpful because we'd be glad to get into it, but I know we're on a time limitation here.
Thanks for that answer, Kathy. Yeah, definitely feel free to leave your contact information. We can always follow up and talk more about any of these questions. Katie, I think we're about done, so back to you.
Thanks, Takami. Look at us, everyone. We're exactly at 1:30. With that, I think we'll let everybody sign off, but we do have this screen up, so if anybody has additional questions, comments, concerns, things that we didn't get a chance to dive into today that you would like to talk more about, that's our job. We're happy to help out however we possibly can. So give us a call, shoot us an email. If nothing else, if after this, oh shoot, I can't remember that contact information. If you just Google MDT and Kalispell Bypass, our project webpage that's listed at the bottom has all of our contact information. You can reach everything there. And again, we're happy to follow up. So we really appreciate everybody's time and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
I want to, again, this is Bob, and I just want to thank everybody for taking time to listen in. Great questions, everyone. I love seeing the interaction, and I'm sorry we weren't able to do this in person. Hopefully at some point in the future, we will be able to have some follow-up interaction in a more personal manner. So again, thank you very much, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll now sign off.